may be seated. Good morning. He is risen. That's awesome. So wonderful to be here with you this Easter morning as we get to celebrate what Christ accomplished for us on the cross and his victory over death. And if you've been worshiping with us during the season of Lent, we've been actually doing a sermon series where we've been talking about Satan and the devil. And I want to explore a little bit this morning about what this Sunday means, what we remember and what we celebrate when it comes to the darkness in this world and ultimately death. And it means so much that there are repercussions not only in our own lives but throughout all eternity because of what Christ has accomplished, defeating death and the grave. As I was sort of reflecting, sometimes I get nostalgic, and I was going through some pictures in a box. I grew up when you had pictures also, and not just everything on your phone in the cloud, so I had to sort through these pictures, and as I was going through them, I got to reflecting on the highs and lows of life and sort of how God works in and through in them. And one of the pictures is a high point. It was my He-Man toy that I got when I was younger. And I remember He-Man was like the thing when I was younger, and I was very excited, as all kids are, when they get the toy that they've been wanting to get so very badly. And I am excited. I don't know what's wrong with my eyes in that picture. And then I saw a picture of me in third grade. This is Mrs. Jordan's class. I'm on the second row from the bottom, and if you look from the left going to the right, I'm the second guy there on the right with that awesome pink shirt and those awesome untied shoes. The thing about this in third grade, besides my mom, I think my third grade teacher was the first person I said, "I love you" to. Yeah, I actually remember I went up to ask her a question, and instead of the question coming out of my mouth, I said, "I love you." And my friends heard it, and it was mortifying. It was so embarrassing. Interestingly, I actually still remember Mrs. Jordan's birthday. I don't know. And then, of course, you go through and you find some other interesting pictures, like my 8th grade dance picture. I'm the fruit stripe gum in the back there, in that back row. And, middle school dances are full of awkward fun. And so that is indeed a memory. And then, of course, you get through some of those interesting times in life. And then, like, a high point was a college graduation. I remember being so excited, finally having finished that moment. And, man, look at that hair. And I was just excited about what was to come and going to the seminary, and I was so happy that I had finally accomplished that. And then when I get to the seminary, I'm doing all the seminary things, and I meet my future wife, who is, for a season, the pastor's girlfriend. And I actually still make that face a lot of times. And as we got to know each other, of course, she went from the pastor's girlfriend, which is as awkward as it sounds, to being my beautiful wife. And what happens after you get married? Eventually you have a baby. And I remember the first time, when it was like, oh, we're going to be parents. And as you kind of roll through life, you get to see your kids start to grow up, and they take on interests and skills and things that you just never thought of, or things you can't even anticipate or imagine. And it's just, life is so exciting. But here's the thing that I was thinking as I was going through those pictures. I was thinking about how fast and how quickly life goes. I mean, I know when you're younger, it's so boring, and it drags on. And then it's like a switch flips, and everything accelerates. It goes so fast that sometimes I tell people I'm 41, but I'm actually 42. And it's not because I'm trying to pass off as younger. I know that doesn't work. It's because I literally don't remember anymore, because the birthdays come so quickly that I lose track of time. And that's just how it is. Like the older you get, the faster things go, the more experiences you have. And when you step back and take a moment to reflect on it, there are really high points, but then there are also low points. And then when you get to about my age, there is a part of you that starts to think, like if the average life expectancy, let's say generously is 80, then I'm over halfway done. And I'm not trying to be depressing by saying that, but it's just like, what happened? And you start thinking about these things. Like the first time you wake up and your back hurts, you're like, my body's not going to be what it used to be forever. Like you start to notice things. And then the longer you live, the more friends, funerals you attend, the more family members you say goodbye to. And death becomes more and more present as you walk through life. But life isn't just all about acceleration, and it certainly isn't about reflecting on death. I mean, there are many, many highs and lows, and you don't have to get to be older to understand this, because even as a younger person, you experience extreme, loss and grief and anxiety and stress, and all these things come into your picture, and you experience these things. And sometimes as we walk through life and we experience these things, there's doubts that creep in. We wonder where God is in the midst of these difficulties, or when we're facing death or around it, where we begin to ponder what Christ means in the midst of all these things. But life is full of crazy. This is another picture of me. This is me at Blockbuster Video, another relic of the past. I don't know why I'm holding a pink purse, but I am. And I love this job. That's why I've talked about this in sermons before, because I would go back in a heartbeat. But I ended up leaving this job at Blockbuster. I worked at their high school and in college, and I left because I got offered a job at a place called Brookstone. Have any of you heard of a place called Brookstone? Yeah, I don't know if they're around as much as they used to be, but they sell massage chairs and Tempur-Pedic mattresses. And so I worked at a place where people would come and try stuff out and never buy it. And so it was really fun. I actually worked at Highland Mall, which is now not Highland Mall. It's a university. It's a ACC, right? And so at this job, when I was in college, I was taking Greek and Hebrew because I was getting ready to go to the seminary, and you have to pass these entrance exams to get in. And so I'm studying, and the rule is, so at the end of the night, the other manager would count the money, and then I would recount it and verify it, and we'd both sign the deposit slip. Then we'd both go down to the deposit box and leave it, and then go about our business. But over time, my coworker noticed how I was studying, and he was like, after we counted the money and I signed it, he was like, why don't you just go ahead and go home? You can get home about 30 minutes earlier. I'll drop the deposit in the drop box. You don't have to worry about it. And I was so relieved. And this he did for me for about 2 months, and then I lost my job. And I lost my job because for 2 months, every deposit slip that had my name on it and his name on it never made it to the bank. And right. So I didn't take the money, but I didn't know if they knew I didn't take the money. And I was freaking out because I thought to myself, can I be a pastor if, I was picturing prison. I was like, if I go to jail for stealing, what is this going to mean for me? And come to find out, they knew I didn't steal it, but I was still fired anyway because I didn't follow procedure, right? And so life sometimes teaches you those lessons. You experience those hardships. And what I learned from that, I learned a couple things. One is I was incredibly naive. I think you should trust people. I think you should be open with people. But the reality is there is evil in the world. There are people that want to take advantage of other people. That's just how it is. And you never know. You just never know. And so when we live in this world, we experience that. People sometimes hurt us unintentionally or intentionally. And then sometimes we ourselves also hurt people intentionally and unintentionally. Now, the world is sort of a mess. And it's a mess that carries us all the way through till death. And this is where Easter matters. You know, if you worship on Easter Sunday, like you know the story. Jesus died on the cross, was buried, and 3 days later he is risen from the grave to a promise of glory and new life for all who believe in him and follow him. That is the story, but there are so many other nuances and repercussions of that truth that reverberate throughout our lives and throughout all eternity. In the book of Hebrews, it says like this: "Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood," that is us, the children, we all share in flesh and blood, "he himself likewise," that is Jesus, "partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery." That is, it says that Jesus himself, he himself partook of the same things. What that means is that Jesus was born like you were born. Jesus walked this earth like you walk the earth. He celebrated at weddings. He mourned at friends' funerals. He saw poverty and pain and suffering. When he was a child, he got lost when his parents left him at the temple and he taught. I got lost in aisle 2 at Walmart. It's the same thing. He walked with us. And he did it so that death, which is the devil, would not have victory, and we do not have to fear death because he went with us and ahead of us, and that means something. I shared a beautiful picture of my wife, not a beautiful picture of me earlier. And my wife is a pediatric occupational therapist. And when you're married to a pediatric occupational therapist, you learn a lot of things. Like you learn a lot of good vocabulary, like ambulate, and you learn vestibular processing. And your wife will also make comments about your fine motor skills and how you walk, and also see pictures of you as a kid and wonder why your eyes don't converge appropriately. But one of the other things you learn being married to an occupational therapist is something about co-regulation. That is, like when a child is dysregulated, when they're upset, when they're angry, when they're frustrated, when they're throwing a fit, you're supposed to come alongside them and co-regulate with them. That is, they can't calm themselves down. They are overwhelmed with the reality of the world that they live in. And so you, in your calmness, come alongside them, remain calm yourself, walk with them through it so they can see that you can remain calm and that they can get through this. And so we do that for our children. We co-regulate with our children. We co-regulate with people in distress and experiencing grief. And as I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that Jesus co-regulates with us. That is, he came into the world to go through what we go through so that we can see in him that we can make it, that we can be at peace, that we can be faithful, and that we will defeat death. And so we have nothing to fear. As Hebrews says, he delivered all those through fear of death who were subject to slavery. He co-regulates with us even through death into victory over death and into new life. So we have nothing to fear. And there's this other interesting story from the prophet Zechariah. Zechariah was a prophet when God's people were released from captivity and allowed to go back to Jerusalem, and they were tasked with rebuilding their temple, which had been destroyed. And when you read the story, all the older generations mourning and upset because the temple looks nothing like it used to. Worship is nothing like it used to be, and it's distressing. And then the younger generation doesn't know why the older generation is upset. They don't fully understand what faithfulness looks like, and it's stressful. Everyone's not regulating themselves. And in the midst of all of this, God comes to Zechariah and he gives him a vision. And it says in the book of Zechariah that he got to see Joshua, who was the current high priest, and got to peek into the throne room, something that was happening. It says, then he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing to his right to accuse him, because that's what Satan does. And the Lord said to Satan, the Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire? It says, now Joshua was standing before the angel clothed in filthy garments. And the angel said to those who were standing before him, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you in pure vestments. What God was showing Zechariah, who is in the midst of this sad, tumultuous time with the people of God, he showed him the high priest being sort of accused by Satan. Things aren't good enough, the people aren't holy enough, things aren't going well, and then he sees God rebuke Satan, address Joshua, remove all his filthy garments, and put on pure vestments of forgiveness and grace. And it's the exact same thing that Christ accomplishes for us. You see, when we live in this world, things aren't always going to go the way we think they should go, and the accuser, that is Satan, is always just right there trying to tell you, you know what, your life, you're halfway done, you better step it up, you're not good enough. Or, you know what, where is God while you're suffering and why these things are happening? You need more joy, but you're not worth it. Whatever it is that Satan is accusing you of is those filthy garments that we stand before the throne of God wearing. And what does God do? He accuses Satan and sends him away, removes those filthy garments, and dresses us with pure vestments. That is mercy and forgiveness and grace. It's why pastors, I don't know what other pastors think about these albs and stoles, but it's really why we wear them. It's a symbol, it's symbolic of God's people being clothed in pure vestments, made clean because of what he did for us. And this is the Easter story. Jesus defeated death, which is the devil. And because he lives, you will live. Because he rose, you will rise. And because of his love for you, and because he walked in this world like you, he's removing those filthy rags and giving us something new that we can celebrate and rejoice in because of what he accomplished for us. And in him, all things are made new. You are a new creation. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.